Hello viewers, today I'm recording another video which is ASP.NET Web API generic code operation. So we previously perform Web API refresh token, JWT authentication. So today I will demonstrate full code operation like create, update, delete and get all using generic CRUD operation. So generic CRUD operation will minimize the code, so using less code we can perform a lot of operations. So if we talk about what is generic is type safe, so it can work without passing the type until program is executed. So in this video basically we will cover this step. So let me share the step here. So we will create project using Visual Studio, install required packages. So as we are going to use Entity Framework Core code first, so we'll install the Entity Framework Core.SqlServer tool, and then we'll create database connection, add database model, and later we'll migrate database migrations, and then we'll create generic repository, add repository service into Program.cs service. We have to make sure the services in the startup, add seed data for testing, create branch controller API, and department. We will create two different model, branch and department. So let's start. We can start. I will create using Visual Studio, create new project using Visual Studio basically. So here is my Visual Studio. It's opening. So finally if we summarize, here is the Visual Studio, create new project. So it is already showing ASP.NET Core API. I have to select, or you have to select ASP.NET Core API. I already install .NET SDK. So let me show you how to check the .NET SDK using the terminal. So here is my PowerShell CLS .NET version. So I already installed .NET 8. So .NET 8 just preview version released, so we'll use .NET 7. And so I was talking about .NET version. So using another command like .NET info, you can check the current install different version in your local PC. .NET info. So as we can see, .NET different version, we can see 5, 6, 7, 8. All the version I have installed due to some test project and other production projects. Basically 7 is version is more stable now. 8 is just preview. I already used 8 for test project like CRUD operation, so just for testing. So in this video we are going to use .NET 7, and our project name will be Web API generic code. So let me define the project name. Web API generic code. So let me define the project location. So in my test folder, in the test folder, Web API generic code Web API project now will be created hopefully without any issue. So here is the details. .NET 7, as I mentioned earlier, I have different .NET SDK version and configure HTTPS, enable Open API support using the Open API documentation. We'll check, and you can use Postman as well. But during capturing screen record and running Visual Studio, Web API Postman is sometimes getting slower, and I'm troubling a lot of issues in my previous video. So that's why I'm avoiding the Postman. I will use Open API documentation over the Microsoft Edge. So our project has been created successfully, and this is the very basic template project. So we can see in the .NET 7 there is a weather static data API. Here is the summaries and weather focused. If we run this project, we can just see simple weather API with static data. Some like here is the list of weather details: static data, cold, mild, warm. So project build success, and if I run the project using the run button from Visual Studio, we can see just we have currently one API, which is weather API. As I mentioned, so weather focused API, if we try out and execute, we can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different data with JSON formats. So responsibility 200 is success. So now our mission and vision is create dynamic using SqlServer, and we have to make sure the create model, database connection, then data migration, create generic repository. Using the repository, we will create 2 controller, branch and department, and then run the project. So we will have finally we will have a 2 different controller. Using that 2 different controller, branch and department, we can perform complete CRUD operation. So hopefully you guys with us, and let me start the next step. So now I will create the model. So our next very first task is create the model. I'm sorry for the sound. I need to update my tool. Also the sound issue. So I'm working. So future everything will be fine in future. So models. So now I will create base entity first for like a few common column like ID, created date and updated dates. Also you can add another more common entity if you want. New class, base entity. So I'm just copying my properties from my existing project for fasting. So base entity is done. Now I will create the branch. So this is the branch, another table name that will have hopefully name and description only to common to main field basically. And class, so branch. So we will extend the base entity. So nullable is enable. We have to remove the nullable and enable implicity nullable. Yes, this one. If we remove, then green suggestion will be removed hopefully. Yes. So we have one table already, and that is branch, and I will add another table for this project more more readable and clearly you can get the clear idea how full CRUD operation journey has been performed using this Visual Studio. So department. So now I will create department model. Department model will have 3 different fields: name, description and address. So suppose we have a department like CSE, AAA, etc. So we have done the model creation, and I will install the required package using the terminal. You can use package manager console as well. So package manager console, you have to go to the tool and to get package manager console. So also you can copy and paste into the, just double click into the project name, and you can add reference here. I'm just installing manually using the terminal, so that you can get the details idea. copy, paste. So installing Entity Framework Core. Yes, so if you click the project, and you can see the Entity Framework Core has been installed successfully, and now I have to install tool and SQL Server. See, SQL Server has been installed and added into the project, and the final NuGet package is installed. So NuGet package installation successful, and now I move to the next step, which is make sure the database connection into the app setting.json file. Not program, sorry, I did a mistake. So here I port my DB connection string. I'm copying my existing project connection string for faster this video. So I have two different connection string. First one is using without using password, username and password, and second one is username and password. So if you have a SQL Server, and SQL Server have an option, you can log in using Windows authentication, so that not required the username but password. And if you set username and password, then you have to port username and password. So you have to add the trusted certificate true. I was getting error using .NET 7, so that's why I added trusted and multiple active result sets true. So this is my two different SQL Server connection. So how to check the server name? Just a simple query. Let me show you. Here is, I am using Azure Data Studio, also the Management Studio as well. Select server name. You can check your server name. So every time I got a lot of feedback with my clients and some other my followers, they are struggling with the SQL Server connection and they are passing the wrong server name. So this is your server name, and you have to pass server name here and the right server name, and we have DB name set the web API CRUD generic CRUD. So DB connection is okay. Now our next step is add connection string and get application DB context and application DB context service and add into the program.cs. So now I'll create add new folder, which is data folder. In the data folder I will add application DB context. So application DB context will extend the DB context, which is Entity Framework Core. Add new class, application DB context, add let me copy or just extending DB context. We need to add reference like DB context, sorry. So that's why better to copy paste. It was typing mistake. Using Entity Framework Core. So here is our DB context. In the constructor we have to set DB context application DB options. So we have initiated the constructor, and finally on model creating and add the model. So here is our two tables like branch and department. So DB context is ready. Now we have to add DB context and DB connection in the program.cs. Here is a lot of additional things. I'm just removing extra things from to clear the program.cs, so no need here. So default app.builders, so just cleaning extract port. Summaries API, do not need this API, and also this. So this looks cleaner now. So I just add one by one. First I will make sure the DB connection. So I will add the service application DB context first. So application DB context service has been successfully, and make sure the DB connection now. So conms SQL, so DB connection, and we have to make sure the controllers. So map controller, also we have to add the controller service, only controller with view for MVC. This is the web API project, so only controller services. So hopefully our program.cs file looks okay, application DB context okay, and app setting does okay. So if we build using terminal .NET build success. So now we'll create migration using terminal command. You can use NuGet package manager as well. So let me just show our DB is not ready, like web generic CRUD operation I already deleted from the database. So there is if I refresh and database, there is no web generic CRUD operation. So if we just create add migration, department requires a primary key. Okay, let me check this. Sorry, I did not extend like a base entity here, that's why I got errors. So now department department table have a primary key. CLS .NET build and .NET add migration in initial create. So migration has been success. Now I will update the database using the .NET Entity Framework Core database update. As we can see, database update operation success, and if we check for validation and refresh our database, sorry for a lot of database, this is the testing and production database, production application based database. So we have two tables which is currently empty now. If we select just for validation and truth of concern, web API generic CRUD, select branch and select department, which is empty. Now I will create some test data so that we can test the application. So before test data, now I will create the our main task, which is generic repository. I'll create first interface in the data folder. Closing all tabs. New in the data folder, I need to create new class like interface, and my interface name is iRepository, and iRepository interface will have create, update, delete CRUD, and also the get and search functionality. So I repository, we have to pass a generic type. We don't know the type now. Once they execute the project, then we can pass the type based on it, and we'll extend like base entity here, where t is equal where t sorry So we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 different methods. So first one is just getting data, and this one is searching by predicates, and add, update, delete, and save changes for common operation. So our repository interface is done. Now we have to create the implementation. Add new class, implementation class. So we have a repository, so we need to extend the type here as well. Pass the type like generic type I repository. So currently it's showing error because we did not implement method. For first using constructor, we have to initiate the application DB context, because we are going to use application DB context here for full CRUD operation. So I initiate a context and pass the context here. If it is null, then it will be throw an exception, and entities, I'm passing the entities here. So I have to implement the pending methods, interface method like get all. So we have successfully create like get by async. So we have entities and find async like EntityFrameworkCore built-in methods, and find by conditions, and get all. So this is the getting data, and add, we're passing class here. T's will be class like branch class or department class, and also here update, also the delete, we are passing the ID, and save changes, common save changes operation. So this is the readable code. If you have any confusion and queries, you are always welcome. Feel free to ask me. I'll share my details. Also I'll share the GitHub repositories. So our repository is successfully done. Using this repository, we are going to perform lots of CRUD operation. In this project, we will create two different branch and department, but you can create what you want. So we need to add a iRepository service into the Program.cs. So we are going to add, so in the Program.cs service.builder, add scope, and if we're going to add scope iRepository and repository. So it is showing error because we have to pass the type. So using the generic repository one argument, so we are not passing the argument. We have to make sure this is the type of. We have to pass type of and the param type of. So service has been added successfully, and we have fixed the errors. So if we now build, is success. So our DB connection done, database migration done, service creation done, also the repository done. Now our final step, we have to create API controller. So using that controller, we can perform the full CRUD operation. So now I will create branch controller and later department controller. So I need to create controllers folder first. add controllers. API empty controller, branch controller. So we have just empty controller. I will add full CRUD operation function here step by step. So now I will create the constructor and passing the I repository. So constructor has been passed successfully, and now I will create the other pending operation like create, update, delete, and get all. So our branch repository is ready. We can now perform full CRUD operation, create, update, delete. So now using the HTTP get, I will get all the branches. So we have all the branches, but currently if we run the project, we don't have any branch. And let me run and check. So we have branch, and if we try it out, execute, so 200 is success and we don't have any branch. So let me add the demo data, seed data. So I will create now seed data. In the data, add new class, seed data. So I'm just copying the seeder data to different method for branch and the department. So we have two different lists now using the API like seeder data API, static data API, static data controller. I create another controller which is called a static data API empty seed data controller. So here is our seed data controller. Now we have to pass the two different lists here. Before passing the list, we have to initiate in the constructor repository branch and department repository. So I'm just initiate the repository in the constructor. So our repository ready. Now we can perform add seed data operation. I will explain the code here how I am performing the seed data operation. So here the add seed data. So we are create object seed data and total branch, and for checking how many branch or department added in from the API. So if count 0, then it will create also the same things for department. So we are calling the repository and using the for loop listed. So our seed controller is API controller is ready, and we already added the test data seed data here, and we are using this list. We are passing this list into the add seed data. So if I build again and run the project, we can see the add new web API which is add seed data. So Swagger operation, as I mentioned, so you can see add seed data, and let me just cross check. We don't have any data in the department and branch. Now if we call the add seed data, try it, execute, so creating data, so it's taking time. So success. So as I pass branch added, department added 4, and if we check the database, we can hopefully find 4 different rows in 2 different tables. So our data is ready, and now if I call like all branch, try it out, execute. Yes, as expected, we get for 4 different data. Now our next task is like create, update, delete operation using branch, and we wrap up this project by creating another controller like department controller. So I'm just closing the seed data, and here's the branch. We need to add different HTTP operation like update, delete, and create. So also I will add get by and get by the search. So here's the get by ID, and also the branch name. Using the branch name you can get data. Those are the HTTP get. Now I will add the add branch and update branch and delete branch. So just we are reducing the code. We are calling the repository, and we have save changes repository and add, and also the update and save changes, delete and save changes. So pretty simple code, and this is the HTTP perf, and we're routing the routing name, update branch and delete branch. So if I again revealed and run the project, so this time we will get complete branch CRUD operation details in the Swagger documentation. So we have get all branch, get by branch, and get by name branch, add branch, update branch. So let me check one by one. So if we try this out, execute. So we have all branch. Now we will using the ID3 we will get like winter branch. If we call get by ID, get by ID, try it out, and 3, execute. So yes, winter. And using the branch name, try it out. So using the branch name, if we copy the winter and paste the branch name and execute, we can get the branch name. So using the branch name we can get. Now I will add the new branch using the post method. So here is our data. So ID will be 0 and created data, updated data you do not need to pass, just we have to new branch, branch, and description is TBD. Execute. Status code success. And using the get all branch, we can execute again. Yes, we have new branch here. Here's the new branch. So now I will update the new branch using the update command. Try it out, and new branch ID is 5 and new BRSCA updated. TBD updated, execute. So success, update success. And if we check all data again, new branch updated. So I will delete the new branch now using the delete operation. Here is our delete operation. Try it out. ID will be 5, execute. So delete operation success. So if I go back to the get all operation, get all API, so 5 has been deleted successfully. So if we summarize the branch API, we have done all the operation like get all, get by, and get by branch name. and we have performed all add branch, update branch, and delete branch. So branch operation is done. So if I summarize the project, we have done the major task. For more understanding, I will create another controller, which is department controller, just for this project more understandable. Now I'll create another web API controller, which is a branch controller, API, empty, and department controller add. So this is the base empty. So now I have to add the service like department repository using the constructor. So how to initiate the constructor? Just type ctor and double tap. So constructor will be initiated without param. So constructor have different type constructors. So this is the without param constructor, and I have initiated the department repository here. Now I will make sure the get update, delete, and other operation. So same as it is branch, so you can cut, copy, paste, and just update the name. So department. So we have department web API ready, and let me show you the demo now. Web API, department web API. Sorry for the sound. So summaries, we have branch and department and seed data for seed data for just creating test data. So we have department, and if we get all department, try it out, execute, so we can get listed department, CSE, EEE, EC, and a test department. We can delete the department as well, and if we check the database, and we can get all the data as well. So test department as well. So using the API call, we can get all the data. So if we summarize the project, we have done all the things, and if we go to the project structure, and here is the project structure. So you have to create web API project using .NET SDK, and how to check the .NET SDK, and later you have to install required packages, and if you double click the project, you can check the install packages. And later on, you have to make sure the DB connection in the app setting.json file, and you have to create the model, the how many table you have. Like we created base entity for common column and the branch and department. Once you have done the DB connection model, and you have to create the migration. I add the migration command here. I will add the migration details command in the video descriptions. So then you have to create the repository, which is the main things in this project. So you have to create interface iRepository, like common operation, create, update, deletes, and get by stuffs. And repository generic is type safe, so you can pass any type before the project is finally executed. So T is a dynamic here, you can pass class, any class name here. That's why generic repository is more popular and more important. And we implemented the generic iRepository here, and we initiate in the constructor, we pass the context and entity, and we have get all and common methods here. So, and another important things, you have to make sure in the Program.cs, I just clean all the unnecessary, remove all the unnecessary, and clean this. So builders, so we have a builders. Using the builders, we initiate the service. These two services by default initiate the Visual Studio, and add controllers. I just added the add controllers. This is the web API project, so you don't need add controller with few. So you add service like application DB context, then make sure the DB connection, MS SQL Server, and finally we pass the repository. This is our generic repository, and builders, you have to map the controllers. So all the things. If you done successfully, and make sure the DB connection properly, you have to make sure the server name. And if you don't have the Windows authentication, like username and password authentication, then you can use this. So you have two options: without credentials and with credentials. So before starting this video, I shared a to-do list, like create project using Visual Studio done, install required packages done, database connection done, add database model done, add migration also done, create generic repository, we have done this. And we have created CRUD data and repository service in the Program.cs, create branch control. We have created two different controller for this project, more understandable, and run and test the project using the default OpenAPI documentation. So hopefully this video is more helpful for you, and if you like this video, and if you have, please subscribe and share your honest feedback. So I will share GitHub repositories and to-do details and common terminal commands and install packages details in the video description. So no more today. Hopefully we'll see you in the next video. So thank you, and please subscribe. So this is the summary using the Swagger OpenAPI. So I'm just closing the project now.